us put ourselves in the holy presence of God, in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Gracious and Almighty God, we humbly come before you today as we hold the third regular meeting of this committee. Bless our members, resource persons, and all who work for justice and safety. We thank you for the opportunity to serve and to deliberate on matters that affect the dignity, safety, and participation of women in our society. Lord, grant us wisdom and clarity as we consider the draft substitute bill and measures concerning the anti-violence against women and their children, and continue our deliberations on the proposed amendments to the Safe Spaces Act, as well as the initial deliberation on women's political participation bills. May our discussions be guided by truth, fairness, and compassion, and may our decisions uphold justice and the common good. This we pray in your most holy name. Amen.
Thank you, everyone, for your most valuable presence in this afternoon's meeting.
Madam Chair, I move to dispense with the calling of the roll.
Second, Madam Chair.
We will proceed to the approval of the minutes of the second regular meeting held last November 25, 2025.
Madam Chair, I move to dispense. I move to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the second regular meeting of the CWGE held on November 25, 2025, and for its approval.
Second, Madam Chair.
There was a motion for the approval of the minutes of the second regular meeting held last November 25, 2025, and duly seconded. I hear there's no objection, so the motion is carried. So first, to give the preliminary remarks of the chair, Congresswoman Matibag. Good afternoon to my fellow legislators, our partners in advocacy, our resource persons, and invited guests, and everyone present today. I welcome you to the third regular meeting of the Committee on Women and Gender Equality. We convene today not just as lawmakers, but as stewards of women's rights in a time when those rights continue to be tested, negotiated, and too often threatened. The work before us is not abstract. It is rooted in the lived realities of women who continue to experience violence, exclusion, silencing, and unequal access to power, whether in their homes, in public spaces, online, or in political institutions themselves. The agenda before us today is significant precisely because it responds to where women are hurting most. Violence against women has evolved in form and reach. Public and digital spaces that should be safe remain sites of harm. And despite decades of advocacy, women's participation and representation in political life continue to fall short of what genuine equality demands. These are not marginal issues. They are structural, systemic, and deeply connected to how power is distributed in our society. As a committee, our responsibility is clear. We must be proactive, not waiting for harm to escalate before we act. We must be responsive, listening closely to women's voices, especially those who are most marginalized and translating those voices into strong enforceable laws. And we must be courageous in challenging norms, systems, and practices that continue to normalize inequality. Let me be clear, gender equality is not a special interest. It is a matter of human rights, democratic integrity, and social justice. When women are unsafe, excluded, or underrepresented, society as a whole is diminished. The measures we will deliberate today are an opportunity to move beyond symbolic commitments and toward meaningful, transformative change. I urge everyone in this room to engage in today's discussions with honesty, urgency, and conviction. Let us legislate with the understanding that the decisions we make here have real consequences for women's lives today and in the generations to come. With that, I look forward to a productive and principled discussion as we continue the work of advancing women's rights, gender equality, and dignity for all. Thank you, and let us proceed with the agenda. Before that, I would like to acknowledge the honorable members of the Committee on Women and Gender Equality who are present this afternoon. Representatives Kakabag-Ao, Representative Percy Sandenya, Representative Jose Manuel Shell Jokno, Representative Shelo Crisel Lagman, Representative Caroline Aguiao, Representative Sarah Jane Elago, Representative Katrina Chuwatay, Representative Gurley Veloso, Representative Agatha Paula Cruz, and Representative Janice Degamo. Also, Representative Irish Marie Montes. May we call on the committee secretariat to acknowledge the presence also of our honored guests and resource speakers.
Madam Chair, the members of the Committee on Women and Gender Equality, may we acknowledge the presence of the following guests and resource persons for this afternoon's meeting. Ms. Maria Aurora Kilala from PLCPD, Angelica Ramirez from PLCPD, Jansen Micah Fajardo from Philippine Commission on Women, Jupiter M. Dagalo from the Philippine Commission on Women, Hannah Dairi Borbon from the PIA, Demetrio Ragua Jr., also from the PIA, Alan Buenviaje from the DOF, Augustus Cesar Navarro from the Department of Energy, John William Lucero from the DTI, Micaela Sulio from the DTI, Giancarlo S. Cris from the DICT, Garcia Lawrence, DICT, Flordalisa Langres from the PCO, Attorney Luis Erica Ocampo, also from PCO, Attorney Cesar Anthony Solis from the Bucor, Jason Christ M. Conti from the PSA, Marchi Solana from the PSA, Neyante from the ICT, Ricardo B. Abewela III from the DFA UNIO, Regina Anel Cruz Velasco from the NTC, Lois Diane Sagayo from the DOE, Angelica Di Malanta from the DOJ, Steve Amido from the DOJ, Lieutenant Colonel Mawel Fausat from the AFP GAD Office, Major Cheryl Mary M. Villarta Igay, OT Jag from the AFP, Edna Imelda F. Legaspi from the CHED, GAD Focal, Roju Josilios, Director 4 from CICC, Michelle Frances Morales Paredes from the COMELEC, Catherine Valenta from Jesus is Lord, Christ Worldwide, Marisol D.L. Ananias from DHSUD, Raymond Patrick Maximo from the DOST Box, Angela Montes from DOST Box, Edmond Beo Cuaroma, Policy Officer of ULAP, Cassandra A. Mata, Chief Admin Officer, DTI, Romel Antonio Cuenca from the CCC, Ramon Perez, DCI, Nicole Faustino from the DCI, Daphne Cunanan from CCC, Climate Change Commission, Diosdado Santiago Jr., SAU LTFRB, Gibran Osway, Office of Honor Aguiao, Camilo Nofis from the COMELEC, Gilbert Salinel from the COMELEC, Maria Isabel Tica, NCFC, Emmanuel Bailosis, NCFC, and JP Zaldariaga will save office. Melanie Aguero from the Department of Energy, Elizabeth Bolante from the Department of Energy, Isa Matanog from the DFA, and Mary Manalo Bautista from the Commission and Audit Legal Office. That's all, Madam Chair.
We would also like to recognize the presence of Vice Chairperson Honorable Isabel Zamora. We will now proceed to consider the draft substitute bill on House Bills number 217, 1394, 2013, 2420, 4047, 4071, 4779, 5228, 5642, 6083, and 6812. This was also sent to all members prior to this meeting. During our previous meeting, the committee secretariat was tasked to draft a substitute bill on EVAUC measures in consideration of the approved amendments during the meeting and recommendations in the submitted position papers. Likewise, House Bill number 6812, authored by Representative Javier Miguel Benitez, which was filed after the approval of the bills in principle, was also considered to be included in the crafting of the draft substitute bill. For information, a draft bill in substitute of EVAUC measures was submitted for comments approval of the authors before coming up with the final draft substitute bill. Under this bill, we replaced the use of the term electronic VAUC with technology-facilitated VAUC, which makes it more comprehensive and responsive in this modern digital world wherein AI and deepfake proliferates. May I now direct your attention to the projector screen wherein you can now see the draft substitute bill being flashed. May I ask the members if they have amendments or comments on the draft substitute bill? If there are no amendments or comments, do I hear a motion to approve the draft substitute bill?
Yes, Madam Chair. There being no other amendments from the members, and considering both the urgency and necessity of this measure amending and strengthening the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act, I move to approve the draft substitute bill.
Madam Chair, sorry, I have a few, for your permission, I have a few, I have a few with the permission of the committee. The sponsor respectfully submits a proposed technical.
Yes, Madam Chair. I withdraw my motion at the moment.
Okay. Just a few refinements.
Go ahead, Congresswoman.
Okay, thank you. Maayong hapon sa tanan, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. And to our resource speakers today. Madam Chair, with the permission of the committee, the sponsor respectfully submits proposed technical refinements to the substitute bill. These amendments do not alter the policy, direction, or diminish existing protections. Rather, they seek to clarify provisions, strengthen enforceability in the digital context, align the measure with evolving international standards on technology. For Section 8, letter K, any such order shall indicate the specific content covered, duration of effectivity, and shall be subject to a motion for modification or lifting by the affected party, internet service providers or platforms acting in good faith compliance shall not incur liability. For the reason being, blocking powers affect lawful content and platform operations. Procedural safeguards ensure due process, proportionality, and reduce risk of constitutional challenge for prior restraint or over censorship. For Section 11, a report submitted to government agencies shall contain only aggregated and anonymized data and shall not include the identity or personal details of the victim survivor. For the reason being, this prevents secondary exposure of victims and aligns with data privacy principles. Workplace reporting mechanisms should not unintentionally compromise victim safety. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
We recognize Honorable Sara Elago.
Yes, Madam Chair. As one of the principal authors of this measure, I am amenable to the proposed amendments of the representative. And now I'd like to amend my motion. I move to approve the draft substitute bill, particularly on House Bills number 217, 1394, 2013, 2420, 4047, 4071, 4779, 5228, 5642, 6083, and 6812, subject to style and the amendments. Maraming salamat, Madam Chair.
Do I hear a second? There was a duly seconded motion to approve the draft substitute bill to House Bills number 217, 1394, 2013, 2420, 4047, 4071, 4779, 5228, 5642, 6083, and 6812, subject to style.
Madam
With
Chair.
amendments. Yes, Congressman.
Madam Chair, I
Sandana.
move to include all members present as co-authors of the substitute bill.
There was a motion to duly seconded that all members present will be co-authors of the substitute bill. Is there any objection? Being a chair hears none, the motion is approved. Having been moved and seconded, there being no objections, the committee hereby approves the draft substitute bill in substitution to House Bills numbers 217, 1394, 2013, 204047, 4071, 4779, 5228, 5642, 6083, and 6812. At this point, may I call for a 10-minute suspension in order to allow the Secretariat to do the draft committee report on EVOC and have it flashed on the screen for the members' perusal before subjecting it for approval of the committee this afternoon. The meeting is suspended for 10 minutes.
Ay, ito po.
Mic test.
Ako na. Okay na. Sino nabigyan na ng laptops?
Hindi pa po. Sino lang po call stop natin?
Hindi, okay lang. Pero lahat nabigyan.
Hindi pa, wala pa nga po eh. Upa po sila nagbibigay ngayon pa lang sila nilibigay.
So this hearing will be a pilot testing for our communications. Wala pa. All right, okay. So the meeting is resumed. May we now proceed to the approval of the draft committee report on eval bills. The draft committee report is already flashed on the projector screen. Do I hear a motion to approve the draft committee report?
Madam Chair.
Kang Percy, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, I move to adopt the draft committee report to House Bill number 217, 1394, 2013, 2420, 4047, 4071, 4779, 5228, 5642, 6083, and 6812, subject to style. So move, Madam Chair.
It has been moved and seconded that the draft committee report be approved subject to style, and having no objection, the motion is approved. May I now instruct the committee secretary to expedite the submission of the approved committee report to the bills and index service together with acquired attachments. Okay. So I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to the members of the Committee on Women and Gender Equality for your leadership, careful deliberation, and strong support that led to the approval of this bill at the committee level. Palakpakan po ang ating mga sarili. Also to our guests who attended, thank you. Best birthday gift po ito, mga kasamahan. I likewise thank you, our resource persons, our government agencies, and the civil society partners. Your technical expertise, advocacy, and lived experiences were critical in shaping a measure that confronts the growing reality of technology-facilitated violence against women and their children, violence that follows victims into their homes, workplaces, and digital spaces, and too often escapes accountability. This committee approval sends a clear message. Our laws must evolve as violence evolves. By recognizing and addressing technology-facilitated abuse, we affirm that online harm is real harm and that women and children deserve protection both offline and online. As we move forward, our work continues. We now carry this measure to plenary deliberations, where we will work to secure its approval by the full House. We will actively engage House leadership to ensure this bill remains a legislative priority, and we'll continue to building consensus across party lines. Beyond the House, we look ahead to constructive engagements with our counterparts in the Senate so that this measure may be swiftly enacted into law. Thank you for your trust, your collaboration, and your shared commitment to protecting women and children. Today is an important milestone, but more importantly, it is a promise to keep pushing forward until this protection is fully realized. Sa inyong lagunanay, maraming salamat po. Thank you. At this point, we will now proceed to the continuation of deliberation on the proposed amendments to the Safe Spaces Act. May now call on our resource persons to air their comments and recommendations on the said measures. Madam Chair.
Yes, Honorable Kaka.
As we are on the deliberation of the Safe Spaces Act, I move to defer consideration of House Bill 4119, which is one of the bills on this matter, submitted for this matter, for further study or be considered as a separate subject matter altogether, because of understanding the nature of the offense in the world of work, which is in this bill, House Bill 4119 track, is non-gendered, which is not a case for the Safe Spaces Act. I so move, Madam Chair. Any second? Any second? There is a motion, it's seconded. This is carried, and this is duly noted, Honorable Kaka. May I call Attorney Angelica Rose de Malanta, State Counsel, Department of Justice, for your comments.
Madam Chair, before we proceed with the resource persons.
Yes.
Considering that there are 6 bills on this matter, I move to approve the remaining bills in principle as we have initially deliberated on it during the last hearing, and for the Secretariat to consolidate the bills, to come up with a draft substitute bill in consideration of the approved amendments and forwarded comments and recommendations for approval in the next committee hearing. And as we continue to hear additional inputs from other resource persons, and we would like also to invite the other resource persons who have not submitted their position papers to do so as we consolidate all the bills that were submitted for the amendment of the Safe Spaces Act. I so move, Madam Chair.
I second the motion, Madam Chair.
There is a duly seconded motion to approve the bill in principle and for the Secretariat to consolidate the bills to come up with a draft substitute bill in consideration of the approved amendments and forwarded comments and recommendations for in the next committee meeting. So are there any objections? The Chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
With the approval of the sponsors, I would respectfully move that all representatives present be recognized as co-sponsors of the bills under consideration, Madam Chair.
There is a motion and seconded that all present representatives will be made co-authors of this bill. The motion is carried. So any more comments? No more. So we may now call our resource person from the Department of Justice, Attorney Angelica Rose de Malanta.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and to the honorable members of this August committee. So the department requests time to formalize our comments on these bills. However, we initially provide these comments. So the department recognizes the intention of the committee in guaranteeing the full respect for human rights and the dignity of every person by some of these salient measures, such as the inclusion of urban, rural, and coastal areas and multi-purpose halls in the definition of public spaces. It also includes artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies and gender-based online sexual harassment. And it seeks to adopt the definition of grooming, which is found under the anti-OSAIC SISAIM law.
Attorney Rose, may we request for more clear tone for the microphone? Can you come closer to the microphone? Okay. Thank you.
Further, the proposed bills aim to make internet subsidiaries responsible for blocking access of content which are violative of the proposed penalties or prohibited acts under the Safe Spaces Act. Furthermore, the proposed bills aim to enumerate the violations of gender-based sexual harassment in educational and training institutions and include additional liability for heads of educational and training institutions for violation of a victim's rights against retribution and confidentiality. So while we interpose no objection to the bills, we submit the initial comments and observations. First, with regard to the inclusion of artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, we note that there is no definition for such term, and the existing legal framework where the term artificial intelligence is found is under the anti-OSAIC SISAIM law. However, we note also that this term of artificial intelligence is actually used under image-based sexual abuse. So we do recommend that encompassing and future covering term for artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies be provided under the proposed measures. Second, under the gender-based sexual harassment in educational and training institutions, there are insertions in several House bills such as 768 and so it's 768 and 768. Yeah. So under House Bill 768, there's a proposed insertion of a section 21 which enumerates gender-based sexual harassment in educational and training institutions. Among these is a conduct that is unwelcome and pervasive and creates an intimidating, hostile, or humiliating environment for the recipient, which may be committed by a student, by a trainee, to a teacher, or to a trainer. It provides that any person who violates these shall be penalized by imprisonment or a fine or both. We raise that the proposed penalties be consistent with the Republic Act No. 9344 or the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act of 2006 as amended, which exempts a child 15 years of age or under at the time of the commission of the offense from criminal liability. Finally, we actually support the motion with regard to HB 4119 as it provides a separate and more neutral, free from gender-based violence world of work. So we do support the motion provided earlier. Again, allow us to formalize these comments, and the department submits. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Angelica Rose de Malanta. Our next resource person will be Ms. Maria Aurora Kilala, Executive Director of PLCPT.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the members of the committee. The Philippine Legislators Committee on Population and Development commends the House of Representatives Committee on Women and Gender Equality for championing bills that will expand the law's protection against sexual harassment for all, provide stiffer penalties, and future-proof the law against emerging technologies or ICT-facilitated sexual harassment. All of these amendments contribute to expanding safe spaces for all. And because we support the proposed amendments to the Safe Spaces Act and the bills mentioned in general, I will just highlight our recommendations and no longer repeat the provisions that we think are commendable. First, for provisions that will future-proof the legislation against emerging technologies such as AI, generative AI, and deepfakes, we recommend alignment and consistency with ongoing amendments to the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act, which was just approved earlier, and the Anti-OSAIC and CSAM Act, or RA 11930, as there are ongoing discussions in the respective committees in both houses, and as pointed out by the representative from DOJ, there are terms that need to be defined in the proposed measures. And we would like to submit our specific recommendations on those at a later date. Second, regarding stiffer penalties, for gender-based sexual harassment committed in the workplace, it is commendable for the bills to amend relevant section in the existing law to raise the liability of employers and heads of agencies who are obliged or obligated to foster safe environments. And while we note that stiffer penalties and sanctions can help deter GBSH and harmful workplace culture, it's important to note, however, as well, that it is the certainty of the enforcement of the policy or the law rather than the penalty that deters the commission of the offense, which is, for us, it is important to highlight the provisions that provide capacity building for implementers and enforcers, as well as the provision of budget so that they will be able to implement and enforce the law. And lastly, on resource utilization, we would like to propose to allocate new resources, monitor and maximize the utilization of existing resources of agencies and local government units to capacitate all personnel that are involved in the implementation and enforcement of the law. Consolidating the proposed amendments reaffirms the commitment of Congress to an inclusive and proactive legislative framework. And at this point, we would like to congratulate the committee for its urgent action, not only on this bill, but the bill that was approved earlier. And we thank the committee for your prioritization of these very important measures. Thank you very much.
Most welcome, and thank you, Ma'am Aurora Kilala from PLCT. Now we proceed to our next resource person, Mr. Jason Christ Conti, Senior Statistical Specialist from the Poverty and Human Development Statistics Division, PSA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So good afternoon, everyone. First of all, we would like to thank the Committee on Women and Gender Equality for allowing us to give inputs on the proposed amendments of the bills. And honorable committee members, we did not have sent yet our policy or position paper, so I'll just read our highlights on it. So the PSA would like to express its sincere appreciation and support of the passage of the House bills, which seeks to expand the scope, definition, and classification of terms used in the Safe Spaces Act and impose greater penalties for the perpetrators and human accessories of the crime. So please allow me to share our recent data in relation to the proposed amendments. So data from Philippine Statistics Authority shows a declining trend in the prevalence of different forms of violence among women aged 15 to 49 from the National Demographic and Health Survey. The percentage of women who experience physical violence decreased from 15.4% in 2013 to 9.8% in 2022. While on sexual violence, it declined from 2.1% from 2013 to 1.5% during the same period. So the trend is actually declining, but it's great that the amendments would showcase the other spaces that were in the cases could happen. So in line with that, in another table from the National Demographic and Health Survey, it shows that estimates among women aged 15 to 49 who have experienced physical violence since age 15 who reported specific persons who committed the violence. To rank it up, we have the first is the current husband or intimate partner at 29.8%. Next is former husband or intimate partner, 27.8%. Then highlighting in relation to the proposed amendment, we can observe that there are 6.2 of perpetrators for physical violence are schoolmates and classmates. In line with the sexual violence, in 2022, there are 38.1% of perpetrator of sexual violence who are current husband or intimate partner, 30.0% are former husband and intimate partner. But in line with the estimate proposed with the amendment, we have 1.6% for schoolmate and classmate. We have 10.7% perpetrator are strangers, and 1.6% are employer or someone at work. So it shows that there are a lot of places or workspaces that could physically have or sexually have cases on violence against women. In line with the clauses on safe environment, data from Philippine Statistics Authority on the proportion of families that feel safe walking around the area that they live at night increased from 82.9% in 2019 to 95.3% in 2022. This data is from the Annual Poverty Income Survey of the PSA. And it shows that this data is on track on achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal target. While this is a good news, in terms of what you have put it in the amendment or the House Bill amendments in terms of Safe Spaces Act, inclusion of the technology-facilitated violence against women related question was included to capture the violence that was stated on the amendments. To adapt on that, the Philippine Statistics Authority included questions in the National Demographic and Health Survey on the following. First, if someone tried to publicly humiliate you on the internet, phone, mobile phones, text messages, instant messages, or social media in a way that was related to you being a woman. Second, if someone sent you threatening message via internet, phone, mobile phones, text messages, instant messages, or social media. Third, if someone shares or shared sexual photos or videos of you via the internet, mobile phone, text messages, or social media apps. And last question would be if someone sent you sexual photos, videos, or messages via the internet, mobile phone, text messages, and instant messages or social media without your consent. So in keeping our commitment towards fostering data-driven policy making, the PSA stands ready to provide pertinent data and technical assistance as needed. We are certain that providing timely and accurate information will aid in the formulation of well-informed policies, ultimately benefiting the nation as a whole. So what I said earlier, in the National Demographic and Health Survey, we included related experience of women on technology-facilitated violence. And from this, we will be conducting the NDHS every 3 years. So we will be having data on technology-facilitated violence for every 3 years. From that, we appreciate the committee's effort in fostering a collaborative approach to policy development and remain available for any further discussion or clarifications on our data. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Attorney Cesar Anthony Solis, CPA and BA from the Bureau of Corrections. But before that, may we recognize our colleagues, Kong Lani Mercado from the 2nd District Cavite and Kong Giselle Maceda, 4th District, Manila. Thank you for your presence.
Madam Chair.
As Honorable Kaka.
Just for the interest of this committee, may we know from the resource persons with the show of hands who are supportive and who are for the amendment of the Safe Spaces Act and who are against?
Okay, so maybe request our resource persons to stand up for those in favor of this act. In favor, yes. So as we can see, to our members, majority of our resource persons are amenable and in favor of this act. Thank you so much, our guest speakers. And may we know anyone from our resource persons who are against of this act can kindly just raise your hand. To our Secretariat, kindly note on this, please. Okay. So to our resource person, Attorney Obed de la Cruz from the Philippine Council of Evangelical Churches, The floor is yours, sir. May we know your comments and suggestions? Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Honorable Committee. So we are not against in its entirety. So first, we observe that this is really good. A lot of it is good. But we also share the sentiments of attorney here who said that increasing penalties or adding more elements may not be the solution, because sometimes when we add more elements, add more words in the law, it gets more difficult to enforce. And also we are also like, for example, I handled a case. We might also need help with, for example, the DOJ, because like last December I handled a case where a child was like her uncle like touched her like private parts, but because the prosecutor, I filed the I was called in when it was already dismissed, so I filed the MR to defend the child. It's just that because, for example, the prosecutor said because there's no reasonable certainty of conviction. That's the new standard that they are implementing, DOJ. So that's why the prosecutor even dismissed again my motion for reconsideration. Even if I interposed the jurisprudence saying that alibi is not enough, alibi should be coupled with physical impossibility. But even with that, I was told that testimonial evidence, because a lot of these are happening undocumented. So a child or a person does not go out and expect to be violated. So this is what's happening. So we are just hesitant because there are so many words, more elements, and on the ground it's getting more difficult to enforce. And we also would like to share that in the implementation of the original Safe Spaces Act. By the way, I've used in my practice. I have used that also already. It's just that there we've also encountered like cases when sometimes the issue was just about the pronoun. If there's no other violence, it's just the pronoun. So if it was like, if there was like an element of unjust vexation or abuse of legal rights, then okay, we have no problem with that if there's really intimidation or harassment. But sometimes the different use of pronouns is already interpreted as a form of harassment. And we also understand that in the evangelical community, a lot of us also need to grow. We are not saints; we are sinners who are needing grace as well. And we hope that there will be more capacity building, biopsychosocial spiritual interventions for both the offender and the victim. We're willing to volunteer in this. Also, the recovery of the offender. There are times when the victim also doesn't want to report because she doesn't want to relive the experiences. So we're having problems with that. And then their legal trainings. Last December, I was with a group of barangay kagawads. They're doing a very good work. But after they have compiled all the evidence, sometimes there are other departments who are not, like they would not file the charges. And the reason is because it's not in flagrante delicto. We're actually shocked because we know the prescription period we can still file, but because it's not in flagrante delicto, or caught in the act, there are departments or agencies who would rather not file. So, and we're having problems with, even if the kagawads, they have done a good work, good case work. So, we are, and also we observe that in the cybercrime divisions, we hear a lot of good reports from Camp Crame. So we note that. But when with the other cybercrime divisions, well, not Camp Crame, we are having a problem. Like enforcing. For example, there was I have a client who was she's already abroad, but her ex-boyfriend is still getting like every day pang McDo and using her nude photos. But we have the GCash number, we have the address, we have the ID. But when my client went to the police said, "What if she's not there? What if the perpetrator is not there? So what can we do?" So we were shocked by that because we have like already the identifying evidence, but still the appropriate authority would not act on it because for some we did not anymore interview why they rejected, but these are experiences happening on the ground. So we are in favor of capacity building strategies, biopsychosocial, spiritual interventions. But I hope that we will not be misinterpreted when we say that we can do this for all, but I hope we can keep our binary notions of gender. At least that's on our part. But for the other, I think there are also other foreign Supreme Court decisions, not Supreme Court, but court decisions where even if there were like discrepancies in the interpretation of gender, still there was still justice. Like there's this case, I think it's a Boston versus Clayton County. So in this case, there was an employee that was fired because he was homosexual, and his justice was achieved through the Biological Sex Act, even if he didn't want to be identified with the biological sex. But we understand that binary notions of gender can still provide justice, even if we differ in its interpretation. So that's where we're coming from. So our objection is not in its entirety, but we've had actual experiences, and we see that it's still deficient in its current form, and having more words, more penalties, more elements might even have difficulty in its practice. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Obed. That's really helpful, and we thank you. And we are truly, we would like to talk to you, and we are getting so much information. Especially, this is your experience is to the grassroots, so that is really important. Honorable Kaka.
Yes, Madam Chair. Just one question for the resource person. Sir, maraming salamat sa kwentuhan. These are very helpful. So in my understanding of your presentation, the issue is not so much about the content, but on putting additional penalties and elements on the commission of violation of the Safe Spaces Act.
Yes po.
At marami po doon sa comment ninyo ay difficulty sa paggawa ng arrest, pag-prosecute, etc. na marami ay maaring makita natin sa opinion din ng DOJ, or paano then isi-shape ng DOJ na masigurong mapalakas ang provision ng mga batas na ito para mas siguradong ma-prosecute. Kagaya ng question mo on in flagrante delicto, on prosecution of cases such as this, tama ba? So, Madam Chair, maybe it will be helpful as we consolidate all the bills to also invite the DOJ to sit with us as we consolidate, and maybe you siguro po, Attorney, to make already proposals on, let's say you say, without necessarily agreeing with you, no? Kasi the essence nga of these bills is precisely to amend the Safe Spaces Act so that we can impose stricter penalties. Kasi nga, wala halos kwenta pag nag-file ka ng case, di ba? Maraming karanasan ganun din. So, ang siguro po, as we find, consensus on how to make this law more effectively enforceable, maybe, Madam Chair, we can invite the DOJ to sit with us with other interested resource persons also, or maybe to submit already proposals on defining better how do we make sure, especially practicing lawyers, no? How do we make sure that this provision can be enforced, can be implemented, and that the police will understand how to apprehend cases like these? Kasi yun nga lang pong violence against children, ang hirap na eh, di ba? Kasi ayaw ng batang masalita, ayaw ng mga nanay, di walang mangyayari. Pag hindi pa nag-assume ng jurisdiction ng SWD, hindi pa matutuloy. So, I mean, I'm sure we will face the same problem in enforceability. So, baka po pwedeng ganun as we consolidate, because we already agreed to consolidate, maybe we can have one session before the formal committee session to just do a review. Or maybe you can submit already as we consolidate, so that by the time we present in the next hearing the consolidated version, we have already incorporated your proposal, especially DOJ, on prosecution of these cases, and even defining crimes na baka malito pagka in-implement po ng police.
Thank you, Attorney Kaka. So, Attorney Obed, may we request the committee for your submission of your brief and more constructive comments on this, especially in legal form, in the Yes. To our guests of honors, to our members, I relinquish first my seat as chair, as I will be attending an important matter, but I will come back. So our senior vice chair will again sit here to preside the committee hearing. For our acknowledgement of Representative City de Maporo, Vice Chairperson of the Committee on Women and Gender Equality from Lanao del Norte, 2nd District. Thank you for attending, ma'am.
May I now call on the next resource speaker, Mr. Jason Christ M. Conti, the Senior Statistical Specialist of Poverty and Human Development Statistics Division.
I already did that, Vice Chair.
Okay, sorry. Okay, we'll call on Attorney Cesar Anthony Solis, of the Chief of the Legal Service of Bucor, the Bureau of Corrections.
Good afternoon, Ms. Chair, and the other members of the committee. We at the Bureau of Corrections, we are fully supportive of the implementation of human rights and, of course, the amendment of this Safe Space Act. We already submitted our position paper last October 9, 2025. For Bill number 768, 1047, 3118, and 4119. And since there are new introduced bills, particularly 5198 and 5464 and 5564, the Bureau has already submitted our position paper yesterday. So our comments are embodied in the said position papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Cesar Solis. Next resource speaker will be Attorney Luis Erica Ocampo.
Hi, good afternoon to the Honorable Committee on Gender and Women Equality. So we are from the Presidential Communications Office, and prior to our manifestation of support, we would like to apologize for not attending the previous discussions, as our budget hearing at that time simultaneously conducted in the Senate. So, Republic Act number 11313, or the Safe Spaces Act, represents a landmark commitment of the Philippine government to eliminate gender-based sexual harassment in public spaces, workplaces, educational and training institutions, and online platforms. It operationalizes the constitutional policy institutions and online platforms. It operationalized the constitutional policy of valuing human dignity, ensuring equality before the law, and protecting women and vulnerable persons from all forms of violence and discrimination. However, evolving forms of abuse, particularly in the digital and institutional contexts, have highlighted certain gaps in the law's enforcement and deterrence mechanisms. The pending House bills seeking to amend the Safe Spaces Act to address these deficiencies by first enhancing penalties, strengthening institutional and public accountability, expanding the law's coverage to emerging digital contexts, and ensuring that mechanisms for prevention, redress, and victim protection remain responsive to current realities. So, allow us also to provide some background on our position paper. The amendments introduced under the proposed legislations broadening the scope of the Safe Spaces Act which includes the use of AI or artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies as means to terrorize and intimidate victims through physical, psychological, and emotional threats, unwanted misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist remarks, have proven that the government takes notice of the fact that harassment and violence can be committed in various forms. In an article published in 2024, the Asia-Pacific region tallied a 1,530% increase in deepfake cases between 2002 and 2023. And unfortunately, the Philippines recorded the highest growth in deepfake cases, which is topped at 4,500%. With the increasing number of deepfake pornography victims and the perpetrators who are continuously guaranteed impunity due to lack of statutory regulations, it is timely and relevant that these amendments to the existing Safe Spaces Act be legislated to cover gender-based violence and sexual harassment committed in cyberspace. It is also worthy of noting that gender-based violence and sexual harassment are not just committed against women and children. Members of the LGBTQIA+ are more often subjected to discrimination, harassment, and violence on account of their sexuality and orientation. In 2023, the Philippines ranked 8th worldwide in terms of transgender people murdered. Statistically, this ranking is considerably high, even with the Supreme Court ruling in 2022 that RA 9262, or the Anti-Violence Against Women and Children Act, equally applies to same-sex relationships. So we summarize our key takeaways from the proposed legislations to the Safe Spaces Act. The PCO agrees with the increased and enhanced penalties to be imposed against any person who will be found guilty of violating the Safe Spaces Act, as it neutralizes the balance and balances the disparity in terms of age, power, and resources between the perpetrator and the victim. Additionally, with the broader scope of the Safe Spaces Act, any form of sexual advances can be difficult to disguise through mere jokes. This helps diminish the number of victims of indecent proposals and other sexual favors. Second, we support the higher ethical standards within the workplace, government institutions, and educational institutions. The salient features of the newly introduced House bills, particularly House Bill number 5198 and 5464, are primarily focused on the heads of agencies who turn out to be the perpetrators of harassment, ensuring that the law provides a stronger layer of protection for subordinates and members of vulnerable sectors. This reinforces the principle that professional hierarchies must never serve as a sanctuary for predators or enablers of harassment. Furthermore, these legislations demand a higher ethical standard by imposing consequences on government officials and personnel who promote or engage in misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, or sexist slurs. The proposed disqualification from holding public office, whether elective or appointive in nature, further guarantees the suppression of predatory activities in public service. We must emphasize that public office shall not be used as an instrument of abuse and shall never guarantee anyone's impunity from justice. Third, the mandatory services to the victims of gender-based violence and harassment introduced in House Bill number 4119, but we understand it's being deferred. It further safeguards the rights and protection of victims of these kinds of violence and harassment. What is even more worthy of recognition is the protective measures that cover also witnesses to these crimes. And lastly, the capacity development and gender sensitivity training as a moving forward solution to minimizing gender-based violence and sexual harassment. With a number of gender-based harassment committed almost everywhere, we find that capacity development and gender sensitivity trainings are essential and shall be integrated in the annual trainings or seminars in any workplace or institution. In all places, a lot of people are subjected to sexual humiliation in the guise of a joke, and in almost all instances, these unsolicited remarks, disguised as humorous statements, somehow constitute as a cover-up for intentional offensive remarks. Okay, for our recommendations, we note that in the current law, and even with the proposed legislations, there is somewhat a lack of regulation with respect to sexual harassment being committed after actual government transaction. Currently, the only act sanctioned by law is any sexual harassment that may occur in the premises of a government agency. However, this does not cover acts of sexual harassment that may likely occur outside the premises of the government agency, such that when a government transaction requires continuous dealings with government employees, such as in cases of audits, certifications, accreditations, to cite a few. And lastly, the proposed amendments to the Safe Spaces Act, collectively seeking to expand the scope of the law due to evolving forms of abuse and harassment, shall cover all areas and avenues where gender-based sexual harassment and violence may occur. The PCO commends the draft legislations, and we manifest our support for the legislators who drafted these proposed amendments to the Safe Spaces Act. The PCO appreciates how our government moves toward a more inclusive society as the broader scope of the penal legislation looks past gender or sexual orientation. We will submit our position paper to the Honorable Committee once finalized. Nonetheless, our position has been firm and has always been in support for the legislations that minimizes, if not at all, deter any forms of abuse. Thank you.
The committee recognizes first the presence of the Honorable Linabel Villarica in the committee. To the members, due to the constraints, may I ask all the time constraints, may I ask all the resource speakers to just submit their position papers to the committee for consideration in the consolidation of the bills. For the next, thank you, Attorney Ocampo. May we just ask, lastly, Attorney Marisol Ananias, the chairperson of the Department of Human Settlements, the Undersecretary and GAD Focal Point System, for her position. She's still here? Okay, she's obviously not here, so maybe first hear the position of Ms. Aurora Pilala. I understand that she has some objections or position. Okay. Okay. Tapos na siya. Okay. So the next speaker will be Attorney Catherine Valencia. She is from Jesus is Lord Church Worldwide. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon to all the honorable members of the committee, especially our chairperson and all those who are here. First, the Jesus Lord Church that I am representing this afternoon is not totally against any amendments of any law that will contribute to the betterment of our nation. However, with regard to the 7 proposed legislative measures that we have that are in consideration here, as my compañero, Attorney De La Cruz said, the organization is not at all, it does not disagree with all the proposal. Okay, what we would like to see first is that we need to revisit if the Safe Spaces Act was really implemented, especially in the provinces. I came from Ilocos Sur this morning, and I'm a practicing lawyer, ma'am. And I know how difficult it is for some enforcement agencies to implement this, especially if they are not equipped with all the necessary apparatus in order to build a case. So there are cases wherein there is a victim, but the procedure is not followed. At the same time, the case will not prosper, and to the detriment of the victims. That is why we do not really disagree with the amendment. However, ma'am, it is our position that first, the efficiency in the implementation of the first law, the Safe Spaces Act, must first be revisited. The capacity building of the law enforcement, especially those who are in the provinces, they are not the same as those which are available in the metropolitan areas. Another thing is that we agree with the proponents that we need to revisit also the penalties imposed. Yes, we believe that the penalty imposable could also be a deterrent to the commission of the crime. However, that in itself, if the people in the village do not understand, although we believe that everybody is presumed to know the law, but the reality is that the law itself is not being distributed or not being the people in the villages are not equipped with this knowledge. They do not know the law. If only the law could be explained to them. That is why, as former president of the IBP of Ilocos Sur, we had programs going to the barangays, wherein new laws are disseminated and they are explained to the people in the language that we use. So we do not disagree with the revisiting the penalty. However, for us, especially in the exercise of our rights, like freedom of religion, exercise or of our religious beliefs, we can see that some of the proposed amendments may act as deterrent to the free exercise of our religion. Like, for example, the proposed provision that the intermediaries can summarily and immediately take down an internet or a material which is posted in the internet, in the social media. I think these things need to be studied, and we need more time so as not to infringe the other constitutional rights safeguarded, and also so as not to prevent those who are in a certain religious belief from exercising their religious rights. I think one of the provisions which I read in House Bill, particularly in House Bill number 5564, among others. So the primordial provisions on the due process of law, as well as the equal protection of laws, I think may be infringed by some amendments. No? And an example is that what I mentioned a while ago. And the subject or the unilateral actions which are proposed to be undertaken with the perceived violation of the law, by posting, for example, a content, in the media or a different form of social media, including the internet. Another ground which we found as not to totally agree is the potential effect of some of the amendments to the constitutional rights of the members of the church, not just our church, but maybe to other religious organizations, pursuant to their freedom, as I've said, of freedom to exercise their religious belief, which may be posted in the internet, and for that itself, that content may be summarily deleted. So, for example, in our church, we adhere to the Bible. We believe that the Bible is the primordial book that should be taught. So maybe there are people who, when they listen to the teachings of the Bible, they may take it as, or they may perceive it as, for example, harassment or something like homophobic element or subject. And under the proposed law, that will be subjected to some penalty. So I think we need to go over the proposal and thinking also that the rights of people to air or to practice their religious beliefs will be respected. So the possibility of violating the constitutional rights of some sectors of the society may be is very much possible. Again, I'm saying that what I'm saying is that we do not totally agree with the proposed amendments of the 7 proposed bills, but with regard to some substantive parts of the law, Madam Chair. Okay, thank you so much. May we be allowed to submit also our written position paper, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Attorney Valencia.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Honorable Bagao is recognized.
Attorney Valencia, thank you din po sa input. No? Pero nag-practice din po ako ng case sa Dinagat Islands. Very rural, very GIDA, malayong-malayo. Safe spaces din po yung ginamit ko basis. Tingin ko, kagaya na sinabi ni attorney kanina, maaaring may mga stumbling blocks dun sa understanding of the police on how to apprehend, on the appreciation of the DOJ on how to identify prima facie cases for safe violation of safe spaces. Of course, that doesn't deter us from precisely enhancing the law so that it becomes more enforceable, becomes more effective. That's my first point. Pero sinasabi ko rin po, naging effective din po ito sa aking practice sa probinsya. Pangalawang point ko po, at ito gusto ko rin po sigurong, una pasalamatan yung DSWD, no? Sa lahat po ng mga pump boats sa amin, kasi sumasakay po ako ng lancha, tuwing uuwi ako sa amin kahit maalon. Isa po sa video na pinipresent ay isang 50-minute video on the Anti-Safe Spaces Act. At nakikita ko po yung mga pasahero doon na nanonood. Cartoons po siya, Bisaya pa nga po ang salita, may English translation sa baba. At tingin ko nag-agree po ako sa point ninyo na baka mas maraming capacity building, mas maintindihan, lalo na po ng mga enforcement agencies. Yung familiarity ko sa educational implementation on the educational side, I appreciate more what DSW did when they came up with a video on the implementation of the Anti-Spaces Act. Siguro third point po, at every Congress, kahit ng chair pa si Honorable Lani Mercado Revilla ng Women's Committee, naririnig na namin ito ng paulit-ulit. No? Whatever our preference on the SOGI or our position on our religion, I think the requirement is to respect everyone. In as much as we would like to respect your point of view and your practice of religion, we also expect that you also respect our perspectives on things, especially on protecting human rights of everyone, regardless of their identities and their sexual preferences, because all of us are human beings. And I think the objective of the law is not necessarily to identify certain acts because these are offensive to just any person, no? But to make sure that it's a human right practiced by, it's a human right, recognizing rights of everyone para po sa pag-promote po ng pagkakapantay-pantay ng lahat. Siguro po, kung meron kayong specific proposal on how to we make more sensitive the respect for whatever belief systems, open na open po kami. Dami ko na po natutunan dyan mula nung bata pa ako na paano po mas maging consensus building tayo sa pag-unawa ng paniniwala ng bawat isa. Bukas na bukas po kami dyan, attorney. Baka po pwede din magsabit tayo sa ating committee secretariat ng specific proposal niyo po, lalo po yung binanggit niyo na substantive question niyo na particular provision on that one of the bills that were submitted for consideration on this matter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Honorable Elagos, recognized.
Yes, Madam Chair. Dagdag lang dun sa awareness-raising efforts, ang Department of Education, meron din po silang professional development programs na kasama yung discussion mismo ng safe spaces or ng Bawal Bastos Act. Kabilang po yan sa kanilang in-service training, yung kanilang inset training. At ang direction ngayon, dapat hindi lang po yung mga guro, no, yung nakakasama sa mga talakayan na ito, pero kasama din dapat yung mga parents at yung mga estudyante na nakakaintindi ng laman ng Bawal Bastos Act. Ganun din po ang Commission on Higher Education. Ang challenge ngayon, kung paano rin po mamamaximize yung mga programa tulad ng National Service Training Program para sa community outreach at mga community-based discussions and seminars tungkol sa Safe Spaces Act. Ganun din, nabasa rin po natin sa position paper ng DILG na ganun din, no, kasama sa local government unit efforts, yung hindi lang mga school-based pero community-based discussion on bawal bastos. Marami na po tayong naabot pero nakikita rin po natin na kulang din pa yung mga efforts. Kaya ang hangad din naman at panata ng committee na ito, yung pagtutulak ng dagdag na pondo at pagbabantay sa mismong implementasyon para mapalakas talaga natin yung pagtitiyak ng espasyo na malaya at malaya sa kahit anong forma ng pagbabastos at gender-based sexual harassment para sa lahat. Maraming salamat, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sarah. So we will now proceed to the next agenda in this afternoon's meeting. Those who are not invited to speak on the next set of bills for discussion, you are now excused. While those who are invited as resource person on the Women's Participation and Representation in Political Affairs Act, please stay. I would like to thank our resource persons for your precious time, effort, and valuable inputs and recommendations for the enhancement of the bill amending the Safe Spaces Act. For our next agenda, the initial deliberation on House Bills number 1, 385, 400, and 6475 regarding women political participation.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Honorable Kaka.
I would like to make a manifestation. Earlier this morning, this representation together with representatives Ismula, Jokno, and Sendanya filed our version of the Women Participation and Representation in Political Parties, assigned as House Bill 7451. And that is the subject of today's initial deliberation. And in this regard, I respectfully move that our bill be included among the measures for deliberation upon its referral to the Committee on Women and Gender Equality, and that our version be duly considered in the consolidation of similar measures on this matter.
I second the motion, Madam Chair.
There is a motion and seconded by our representatives, and the motion is carried. We will now proceed to another topic, which is the initial deliberation on House Bill number 1385, entitled An Act Promoting Women Participation and Equitable Representation in and by Political Parties, Giving Incentives Thereof, and Creating the Women in Political Parties Empowerment Fund, introduced by Honorable Iris Marie Montes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Distinguished colleagues, guests, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. The 4K Party List, the Women's Party List Organization and Advocacy Group, is honored to sponsor HB and Representation in Political Parties Act. This measure is being proposed not as a partisan proposal, but as a practical, rights-based, and evidence-driven step to strengthen our democracy by ensuring that women who make half of our nation are meaningfully present where decisions are made. Despite constitutional guarantees and decades of advocacy, women remain underrepresented in elective office and in the leadership of political parties. Recent studies shows that women hold only a fraction of elected positions nationwide. Hence, this bill addresses the imbalance through three complementary pillars. First, institutionalizing party commitments. 2, setting measurable thresholds. It defines equitable representation as at least 30% of women in party leadership and at least 30% of a party's official nominees being women. Third, it provides positive incentives. It creates the Women in Political Parties Empowerment Fund to support parties that meet the certification criteria. These provisions are designed to change incentives and structures, not to impose quotas in isolation. They encourage parties to invest in recruitment, training, and the institutional reforms necessary for sustained inclusion. According to the World Economic Forum, it will take 95 years to close the political gender gap, and for parliaments in particular, according to the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance Global State of Democracy Indices in 2019, at the current rate, it will take another 48 years to reach gender parity in parliaments. Nakakabahala po ito sa bahagi ng ating hanay na may malaking maiaambag sa pagpapabuti ng politika sa bansa at sa paghuhubog ng mga pulisiyang panlipunan. We believe that passing this bill into law is a crucial step in promoting democratic representation, where women representation can bring about significant reforms and diverse perspectives towards the development of holistic social welfare policies. Madam Chair, we can start here today in closing the political gender gap. May I therefore ask the committee to hasten the approval of this measure. Let us give our political parties the tools and incentives to open their doors wider to women leaders. Let us invest in a future where our laws, budgets, and institutions reflect the full diversity of our people. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon pong muli.
Thank you, Honorable Montes, for House Bill number 3400, entitled An Act Promoting Women Participation and Representation in Aid by Political Parties Giving Incentives Thereof and Creating the Women in Political Parties Empowerment Fund, introduced by Honorable Patrick Michael Vargas.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the Honorable PM Vargas, I move that the explanatory note for House Bill number 3400 be adopted as the sponsorship for the same bill. Maraming salamat, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sarah. House Bill number 1385, introduced by Honorable Linabel Ruth Villarica. You're recognized.
Madam Chair, also my House Bill 6475, my explanatory note will serve as my sponsorship speech. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to manifest that I also filed House Bill number 7363 on women participation and representation in political parties. May I ask our Senior Vice Chair, Ma'am Queenie Gonzalez, to preside.
We now recognize our chair from the committee for her sponsorship speech for House Bill number 7363.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Distinguished colleagues, I rise today to sponsor House Bill number 7363, the Women Participation and Representation Political Parties Act. At its core, this measure asks a simple but uncomfortable question. If we, women, make up half of our population, why do they remain a minority in the spaces where political power is decided? In the Philippines, women constitute more than 50% of registered voters, yet they occupy less than one-third of elective positions nationwide. In our House of Representatives, women account for only around 28 to 30% of its members, and at the local level, particularly among governors, mayors, and barangay capitans, the numbers were even lower. This gap persists despite our Constitution, the Magna Carta of women, and decades of evidence that Filipino women are politically engaged, educated, and capable. The problem is not lack of women leaders. The problem is access. Political parties are the gatekeepers of political power. Yet too often, women are treated not as leaders, but as placeholders, bench warmers for husbands, fathers, sons, brothers. We are nominated to hold the seat, to keep the name warm, to protect political machinery, but not to wield power in our own right. And when women dare to assert the independent leadership, we encounter familiar, deeply gendered narratives that women are too emotional for governance, that we are weak and decisive, unsuited for hard politics, that leadership is naturally masculine and authority sounds better in a man's voice. Let us be clear, these are not facts. These are stereotypes, and stereotypes have no place in democratic system. Studies, both local and international, consistently show that women in politics prioritize legislation on education, health, anti-corruption, social protection, and peace building without being less competent in fiscal or security matters. In fact, countries with higher women's representation show better governance, outcomes, stronger transparency mechanisms, and higher public trust. So when women are excluded, democracy is weakened, not protected. So this bill does not claim that women are better than men. It asserts something far more fundamental. Women are equal. Let me state this clearly for the record. Advocating for more women in politics is not anti-men. This bill does not remove men from leadership. It does not disqualify male candidates. It does not pit genders against one another. What it does is correct a long-standing imbalance by ensuring that political parties who receive public recognition, incentives, and legitimacy are held accountable for opening doors that have been systematically closed to women. Gender balance is not inclusion, it is inclusion done right. So House Bill number 7363 introduces concrete, measurable forms. First, gender balanced representation in party leadership and nominations. Secondly, dedicated funding for women candidates, especially during elections. Third is capacity building training, protection against tokenism and substitution. Fourth is transparency, mechanism to ensure that support for women is real and not symbolic. Madam Speaker, women in this country have led revolutions, resisted dictatorships, built communities, managed households, and sustained our economy, often without recognition or power. To claim that we are unfit to govern is not only inaccurate, it is historically dishonest. This bill affirms the truth. We should no longer have to defend. Women do not need to prove that they belong in politics. Politics must prove that it is worthy of women. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the immediate passage of House Bill 7363. Thank you, Madam Chair. We may now call Honorable Dada Ismula from Akbayan Kaka Bagao Dinagat Islands to sponsor 7451.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Akbayan's House Bill 7451 celebrates a very big improvement on the what used to be gender quota advocacy for women's inclusion in politics. We are very used to the 30% quota requirement, but in these bills that we want to propose today, there will be equitable representation in political parties. That means that at least 50% of the leadership and internal policy-making structures of the political party are women. And there's also equitable representation by political parties, which means that at least 40% of women are nominated as official candidates of the political party. This bill also establishes the Women in Political Parties Empowerment Fund, which can be accessed by political parties that will qualify with the requirements of this act for the implementation of women and gender and development activities that shall be monitored by the PCW and the COMELEC. This is a very big improvement to our existing legislations on women's participation in politics and governance and taking hold of power in making decisions for the development of our country. And I encourage all our members to support this so that we can also approve this during the plenary. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kaka. Thank you very much to our honorable authors for enlightening us with the intent of your bills and its important features as well. For everyone's information, we have invited various guest resource speakers from the government agencies, non-government organizations, civil society organizations, academe, major political parties and leaders, and party list organizations. So before we proceed, we'd like to inform the body that we have received position papers from the Philippine Commission on Women and Commission on Audit. May I also ask those who have not yet given your written position papers on the bills to submit to the committee. Ms. Jansen Fajardo from GAD Specialist, Philippine Commission on Women, you are recognized, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. First of all, the Philippine Commission on Women is grateful for the opportunity to deliver its position. First, we appreciate the consideration of the recommendations put forward by the Commission in our Women's Legislative Priority Agenda, particularly on enacting a Women's Representative and Participation Law. The proportion of women in politics or in public office is yet to meet the 30% critical mass. And so this is important for the minority group to be able to influence decision-making, policies. And of course, for the Commission, one of our recommendations is to achieve the 40-60 formula to up that threshold for our gender quota. And of course, we would like to float a few things. First, we recognize that one of the provisions is on the submission of a GAD agenda. First, we would like that the GAD agenda be clearly defined, especially for us to have a common understanding that this is not just a list of activities, but a strategic framework. In practice, in the Philippine Commission on Women, this is a 6-year plan, and it is supposed to be your projects, activities, and programs that have been called from gender analysis. So the gender issues identified come from consultations and similar activities. Second is that the GAD agenda should serve as a mechanism for transparency. So ideally, this would be disseminated to the public for their guidance and, of course, for them to better understand what would be the priorities and plans of the political parties and to submit these GAD agenda. And, of course, also, it is important to have a provision outlining how progress and implementation of the GAD agenda will be monitored, evaluated, and, of course, reported. This is also to inform, of course, our policy making for future references. So we put forward that in the provision on full disclosure, it would not only contain the amounts received or the expenditure, but it would also be on the progress of the implementation of the GAD agenda, of the programs, activities, and projects outlined. So for the Commission, this move would solidify the country's position as the leader in gender equality and women's empowerment in the Asia-Pacific. So we support this legislation, and we put forward, as we have submitted, the recommendations in our position paper. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. For our next resource person, the Director Michelle Frances Morales Paredes from the COMELEC.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Earlier this morning, the Commission on Elections emailed already our position paper, and if the body will allow me, there are certain facts which we wish also to be included in our position paper. Perhaps a supplemental position paper will do, Madam Chair. It's more on the added features of the bills, perhaps on the implementation side already. So perhaps this calls for year-round regulatory measures between the PCW and the Commission on Elections, and of course we also have our partner COA for this bill project. It requires regulatory measures on the internal party governance structures, leadership composition, nomination practices, fund utilization, and disclosure. So with that, we are thinking of a proposal that perhaps we can assign a small unit from our respective agencies who will totally focus on the monitoring side of compliance of the political parties, considering that if we will use the existing resources of our respective agencies, they are already performing their usual functions. So ang tendency, Madam Chair, exhausted na yung mga resource people natin para to do the monitoring and the regulatory functions. So yung implementation side might weaken. So siguro ang isa sa mga proposals namin sa supplemental position paper namin ay mag-assign ng small unit from each agency who will focus devotedly on this one. The second one is that perhaps since this one is a new law na maganda and we are speaking of around 200 political parties, national, regional, and local level, baka pwede tingnan muna natin yung what do you call this, yung partial implementation. Tingnan natin, siguro sisimulan ba natin sa national level kung ano ang mangyayari sa implementation side ng national level. And then magiging case study natin ng national level on how we can further improve ang implementation side ng ganitong ng proposed bill po natin, Madam Chair. But this will be supplemental position paper on the part of the Commission on Elections and as I've said earlier, we have emailed already our position paper this morning. That will be all, Madam Chair. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, thank you, Director, and we're looking forward to your supplemental comments. Thank you,
Madam Chair.
Honorable Kaka.
I agree with the COMELEC's presentation, and maybe to enhance the existing bills that were filed. Can we ask COA, COMELEC, and PCW to submit also, as you have submitted your documents, but can you add a document that shows a structure that can be utilized as an implementing mechanism for this law if it is enacted? Which existing unit in your agencies, para po hindi lang kami vague na magsulat na a unit, no? Pwede po ba specifically which departments or units in your agencies can very well implement this mechanism? And then siguro, ma'am, some of the points you raised are, I think, could be covered in the implementing rules. Pero siguro po yung structure lang, maganda po yung sinabi nyo na who will regulate, since all of you have specific tasks on this, no? Tapos siguro, ma'am, I agree with PCW also. Since some of the words in the bills are written as a list of activities, and you say mas maganda siguro kung gender framework or guide, etc. could be used in the, para hindi lang list, kundi yung parang may fundamental talagang framework, no, kung ano talaga yung principles that should be incorporated in the parties. Siguro po kasama sa isubmit nyo yung how do you propose your task should be worded in the framing of your the parang guide and parang yung framework in the implementation of the task of political parties. Thank you po.
That's nice, Attorney Kaka. Thank you. And any more questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. One suggestion po from this representation is to include a provision on raising awareness, on information, and education on the significance of women's political participation, including the impact of violence against women in politics or political life. Just to share, Madam Chair, some of the most recent studies show that more than 76% of women experiencing abuse or harassment on social media, of those women involved in politics, shared that they think twice when they interact online. Next is that 32% shared they stopped commenting on certain issues altogether. And lastly, 61% of women in government believe that the main drive behind the harassment they face is to deter women from engaging and involving in political leadership positions. So I think that's really important. Isa po talaga yun sa nagiging deterrent, no, ng active participation ng mga kababaihan sa politika at sa pamamahala. Pangalawa, Madam Chair, we'd also like to recommend the inclusion of a provision on the preferential guarantee for women from marginalized sectors for campaign financing and incentives. Yung nanggaling naman sa mga sektor talaga na kumbaga kailangan ng dagdag na suporta para sa campaign financing. Mga kababaihan po mula sa mga maralitang sektor, mga kababaihang magsasaka, mga kababaihan ng mga migrante, mga kababaihan ng katutubo, na madalas po ay hindi natin masyadong naririnig at nakakasama sa iba't ibang espasyo ng pamamahala at ng pagdedesisyon tungkol sa iba't ibang patakaran ng pamahalaan. Yung dalawa lang po, yung ating mga recommendation, at kung mamarapatin po ng ating mga sponsors, pwede po tayong mag-draft ng provision para dito at maisama natin sa ating consolidated bill. Maraming salamat. Madam Chair, may I move that we consolidate all bills related to women's political participation? So moved, Madam Chair.
There was a motion was duly seconded for the Secretariat to consolidate the bills and come up to a draft substitute bill incorporating the comments and recommendations raised for the consideration in the next meeting. For our resource persons who attended today, we also would like to thank you for your time and sharing your comments and insights in today's meeting for the Committee on Women and Gender Equality. For our other matters, we would like to invite all of our members, the Committee on Muslim Affairs, chaired by our fellow CWGE member, Representative Bai Dimple Mastura, would like to cordially invite the CWG officers, members, and staff to attend the celebration of the World Hijab Day. With the theme celebrating identity, empowering women, and advancing inclusive growth. This event will be held on Monday, February 2, 1 p.m. at the South Wing Lobby House of Representatives. So I encourage everyone to attend. I will be attending. And I think our good Representative Bai Dimple would be distributing hijab for all women representatives. And we would like to also ask that we will wear the hijab on Mondays. So there will be a tutorial classes for 1 p.m. 1 p.m. South Wing Lobby. South Wing Lobby. Are there any other matters to discuss from our members? None? Do I hear a motion? Yes, ma'am.
I move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. It's seconded. Having no other matters to discuss, and there was a motion for adjournment, and duly seconded, the meeting on the Committee on Women and Gender Equality is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Yes, and for those who haven't received their package from the everyone has it now. Okay, thank you. Okay. May I just read this introductory remarks? No. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to inform the CWGE members that our committee was chosen for the pilot run of the iPad app, which was developed by the Department of Information Technology in partnership with the Development Bank of the Philippines Data Center for the House Book Project of Speaker Faustino Boji D, starting with our meeting this afternoon. May I request Mr. Perez and Mr. Ramos, who will do the pilot test, to elaborate and explain about the implementation of the House Book after the picture taking. Thank you.